But first, $55.8 billion. That was the record payday for Elon Musk back in 2018. But today, a judge in the US state of Delaware said it should be scrapped. Well, the pay deal was the biggest ever in corporate history. It propelled Mr. Musk to the top of the list of the world's richest people. But Judge Kathleen McCormick said the pay was unfathomable and could put his title as the world's richest man at risk. Look at all those zeros. Well, figures from Bloomberg and Forbes suggest his net worth is between $198 billion and $220 billion. Well, the pay this time was from his electric car company Tesla. It was linked to performance targets, things like Tesla's share price and its profitability. And actually, if you look at that measure, well, the value of the company did soar. It topped $1 trillion in 2021. That's up from $50 billion when the pay deal was originally negotiated. Well, Mr. Musk sold a large chunk of Tesla to buy Twitter. It means it now owns around 30% of the electric car maker. But, and here's the rub, cancelling his pay deal would mean he also misses out on more than 300 million Tesla shares. That would have helped him boost his stake. So let's talk about all of this with Chris Roebuck. He's a leadership expert on the UCL School of Management Advisory Board. Chris, let me put that question to you first of all. How much is too much? Does someone like Mr. Musk need a payday like that?
Well, you could take it from two perspectives, Ben. There's the business perspective. Can you justify this through performance? And then there's the moral perspective, which suggests that in today's society where people are having a hard time, perhaps 58 million is probably too much morally. I think the key question, though, is how it got to the point that he even was offered this deal in the first place. And that's what the judge picked up on in terms of there was a suggestion that perhaps the remuneration committee was not exactly transparent with shareholders.
Yes, and that talks to his power on that board. And that's what the judge, as you said, in Delaware made note of, suggesting that he had too much influence on the behaviour of that board. But you're right. I mean, given that it was set in 2018, linked to performance, it's fair to say the firm delivered on that performance. But I suppose the question is, you know, was it known at that point in 2018 that the firm would do so well?
The concept of, so first of all, the concept of remuneration committees was before remuneration committees in the bad old days, CEOs set their own pay and things got pretty outrageous. So various governments around the world said, look, you can't keep doing this. You need to have an independent committee that sets the pay in terms of, is it performance? Is it relative to other CEOs? And is it a challenging target that the CEO has to achieve? Effectively, the board knew that on the current predictions of performance, Musk would get his objectives pretty easily without a problem. They did not tell the shareholders that. They implied to the shareholders that Mr. Musk was going to have to work very hard to meet these objectives. And that lack of transparency, to put it subtly, maybe politely, lack of transparency, the judge suggested it might be worse, was why the shareholders agreed. Had they known the real situation, they probably wouldn't have agreed it.
Yeah, and Chris, therefore raises huge issues, doesn't it, about trust, transparency, integrity of the board in the way they're running this company. And again, it comes back to that point about whether Mr. Musk has too much influence on the behaviour and the outcome of those board meetings.
Fundamentally, that is the problem that Musk has demonstrated, the fundamental weakness of remuneration committees for the most senior and powerful CEOs. And there have certainly been cases where, as has been suggested by the judge here, that you stack the remuneration committee with friends of yours and people you do business with. Or we have seen the reverse effect to some degree, where on a remuneration committee you have 2 or 3 independent directors who are saying to the chief executive, no, you can't have that level of pay for that level of performance. The targets have to be tougher. And those individuals have been eased off the board, so the board becomes more compliant. In the end, it's about, as you say, the trust that the organization and its shareholders have in that CEO and their integrity. And sadly, not the majority by any means. There are a few out there who have been found lacking.
Chris, stay with us, because I just want to play people another clip about top pay for bosses, because earlier this month on the BBC, the boss of Centrica, that's a company in the UK best known for running British Gas, he revealed how much he earned in the last year, and he said he couldn't justify it. This is the boss of Centrica. He's been the boss since 2020. He was asked if it was right that he received 4.5 million, not billion, but £4.5 million in a year. It's about $5.7 million. Of course, coming at a time when the average British wage is about 150 times smaller, and of course at a time when many people are struggling with the cost of living crisis, rising costs across the board. This was his response.
It's a huge amount of money. I am incredibly fortunate. I don't set my own pay. That's set by a remuneration committee. And that's the first bonus that I'd taken in my time in Centric. In a number of years I'd given up bonuses because of hardships that customers were facing. I thought it was right that we put a lot of our money, a lot of our profits into supporting customers. But you can't justify a salary of that size.
Can you say that again?
You cannot.
You can't justify.
Well, you can, because it's a huge amount of money to anybody looking at this. It's a huge amount of money.
So, Chris, a rare occasion when a boss says, I simply cannot justify it. But he's right to point out that was set by an independent board, so it wasn't in his control, but he was clear that he couldn't justify it. We should be really clear as well, what he's talking about there is a payday that was worth 4.5 million. I just want to put the number on screen of what Elon Musk's payday looked like. 56 billion, or nearly 56 billion, 55.8 billion. All those zeros, it's really hard to get your head around a number that big. So if we're talking in the UK about not being able to justify 4.5 million, how does Elon Musk justify something like this?
Well, Ben, he's Elon Musk. He doesn't have to justify anything. I mean, that's perhaps the perspective that the judge picked up on.
But there's a real disconnect, isn't there, Chris? I mean, you know, at all levels, about what bosses are being paid and what ordinary folk who are working in these businesses. And in Elon Musk's case, the people assembling these cars.
Yeah. You know, even if you go to the FTSE 100, average CEO FTSE 100 pay of about 3.9 to 4 million. I mean, that's still, you know, in UK terms, 150 or however many times above your average worker. 3.9 million for FTSE 100 CEO versus 39,000 for a paramedic who saves lives. You know, there's a fundamental moral question there, and I think the issue is that it reinforces the perspective of the general population that there are corporate elites out there who are in a completely different world and who really don't care.
Chris, always good to talk to
you.
Yeah, it is. It really is fascinating, isn't it? It's something we'll keep talking about, but it really does put it in perspective when you see those sorts of numbers, doesn't it? Really good to have you with us, Chris. Chris Roebuck there with the latest there on Elon Musk's payday that has now been annulled by that judge in Delaware.